All arguments against veganism debunked right here in this video. Let's do a speed run. Let's make it quick. Now, whenever we debate this, the most important thing is to get your definitions correct. Make sure you're always defining very clearly what you mean by veganism. And veganism to me is an ethical stance against animal cruelty, animal exploitation, as much as and as far as practicable. Also, it's upholding animal rights. That's all. We think animals deserve rights just as humans deserve rights for the same reasons. So let's get into all the counter arguments that we hear as vegans all the time. Number one, but the animals do it. This is a naturalistic fallacy. Just because animals do X action doesn't make that action okay or morally permissible for humans to do. Animals also sniff each other's behinds. Does that justify humans doing those same actions? I don't think so. Hence, just because an animal does something doesn't make it okay for us. Also, we have choices as human beings, and with choice comes responsibility to make the right choice. Animals don't have that. They live in the wild. They have no options as we humans do. We have stores to go to. We have all kinds of delivery options. We have the ability to choose, hence we have responsibility. Number two, but it's the circle of life. Well, we can be part of the circle of life without killing and abusing and slaughtering innocent beings. There's nothing about the circle of life that necessitates us harming and abusing innocent beings. And by the way, throwing pigs in gas chambers is not the circle of life. That's the circle of torture. Number three, but protein and B12 though. Firstly, all plants have protein. Now, the amino acid profiles are going to differ between plants and meat, but they're generally all very similar. And the bioavailability of plant-based proteins is nearly identical to meat-based proteins. And there's tons of vegan bodybuilders out there who actually are very, very strong, very, very protein adequate. They're getting plenty of protein in their meals. Peanut butters and, tofus and beans all are very protein dense. B12 is found in tempeh, tofu, mushrooms, nutritional yeast, fortified foods, and supplements. There's nothing wrong with supplementation. There's nothing immoral about it. And any appeal to nature saying, well, it's not natural to supplement B12. Well, first of all, again, that's an appeal to nature fallacy. And also, plenty of cows that you consume are fortified with B12. They're given injections. There's nothing about taking a B12 supplement that is bad. Also, the modern food supply is devoid of B12 because of sanitization. B12 comes from bacteria, not from meat. Number four, we're omnivores though. So these classifications are largely arbitrary classifications. What an omnivore is or an herbivore is. I mean, they're loosely based on physiological cues like digestive system and things like this. But it's debatable whether or not we're herbivorous or omnivorous, but it doesn't matter. Even if we were omnivores, we can still be vegan. There's nothing about being an omnivore that necessitates us consuming animal products. And no, our canines don't tell us that we should eat meat either. There are plenty of herbivorous animals like mountain gorillas who have larger canines than we, yet they eat mostly plants. So there's nothing about our physiology that necessitates or tells us that we ought to consume animal products. Number five, but meat's tasty though. Taste doesn't justify killing someone. If a human tasted good, would that justify killing and eating a person? No, that would not be a qualifier at all. So if you wouldn't eat a person if they tasted good, why would that grant you the right to eat an animal if they taste good? What's the morally significant difference? And think of how quickly you're consuming your food. I mean, 10, 15 minutes max. You're talking 10, 15 minutes of sensory pleasure justifies taking someone's life that had potential for years of life. If you think a few minutes of taste pleasure grants you the right to kill someone, what if I got pleasure from hearing you scream when you get hurt? Would that justify me hurting you and just to hear you scream? I don't think so. I think it's ridiculous. I think sensory pleasure is not a good reason to kill others. Number six, but my culture and our ancestors though. Our ancestors did terrible, terrible things in the past. I mean, many of them were cannibals. Many of them were assaulters. Many of them were very, very bad people. Why ought we do what they did? Why ought we follow what our ancestors did sheerly because they were our ancestors? That's ridiculous. We don't have to consume meat at all today. And no matter what our ancestors did, it's completely irrelevant to today's modern world where we have a myriad of choices and abilities to do otherwise. If you're going to say that our ancestors doing X action makes it okay for us to do today, well then that would allow you to do all kinds of disgusting things that our ancestors did. Our ancestors were slave owners. Would that grant us the right to have slaves today? I don't think so. Culture does not dictate ethics. Number 7, but God says it's okay. First of all, no religious text that I'm aware of, at least in the modern, major religions, tell us that we must consume animal products. But typically people like this will say, well, God gives us dominion over the animals, therefore we get to eat whatever we want. But would this argument hold up with beings like dogs? Most religious people I talk to also think it's wrong to consume dogs. Where's that in the Bible or the Quran? Where in the Torah does it say, you shall not consume dogs? Can we enslave and farm billions of dogs every year like we do to the other animals because God says that we have dominion over others? I think this is a very inconsistent view on behalf of the religious person. Also, I'm pretty sure that if God existed and he was all good, as you say he was, then why would he tell us to cause unnecessary, gratuitous harm to others when we know that animals suffer for no good reason? We do not have to cause suffering to the animals. Why would a good God tell us that we ought to cause excess harm and suffering? It makes no sense. If he wanted us to govern the earth, why would he want us to destroy it in the process? Why wouldn't he want us to be sustainable? And veganism is way more sustainable than any kind of animal-based diet. And lastly, if your ethical position is that whatever God says is good, well, what if God said that murder is good? Would you then think it's okay to murder because, well, God said it? Would you think slavery is good because God said it's good? And by the way, God allows slavery in the Bible. Religious morality on its own has tons of problems, but especially bringing it into this conversation, it is extremely inconsistent. Number 8, crop deaths though. How about all them crop deaths, Mike? How about the gophers and the tortoises that you kill for your soy? Firstly, crop deaths are necessary under current infrastructure. There's no way around it. There's no way to eliminate it in any practical way in today's world. However, vegans are for reducing the need for crop deaths. We're for hydroponic farming. We're for vertical farming. We are for those things that require less and less animals to die. So in virtue of crop deaths being necessary, it's perfectly compatible within a veganistic view. Why? Because remember, the definition of veganism, it doesn't mean that no animals die. It means that we want to reduce harm. We want to reduce suffering as much as practicable. In other words, as much as we can actualize successfully. So we don't see crop deaths as rights violations because they are an unfortunate necessity. Remember, if we don't grow these crops, we die. But from a purely, utilitarian perspective, we can say that way more crop deaths occur because of meat eaters. Animal products require far more crop production because all that crop production goes to the animals as animal feed, especially soy, right? A vast majority of soy, about 70% of soy is grown for animals. If you're against crop deaths entailed by soy production, then go vegan. You're actually arguing for veganism by saying crop deaths because vegans cause way less. And plenty of studies show that if everybody in the world was vegan, we can produce all the crops and food required caloric-wise and still use 70% less crops. That's incredible. That's a great reason to go vegan, not to be against it. Number 9, the food chain though. We can be part of the food chain and still not consume animal products. We can still be part of the food chain and be vegan. But the food chain's another arbitrarily constructed concept. Some people say we're the top of the food chain. Some say we're the middle of the food chain. It's all arbitrary. At the end of the day, nothing about the food chain necessitates or tell us that we ought to consume animal products. We don't have to. Number 10, but we're smarter. Well, this is debatable, but I'd say that humans are way underestimating how intelligent these animals are. Pigs, cows, chickens, they are way more intelligent than we think they are. In fact, pigs have intelligence that is on par, if not greater than dogs, in terms of their IQs, in terms of their EQs, in terms of their ability to recognize faces and words. And I would say that most non-vegans think it's wrong to kill dogs, no matter how intelligent they are or non-intelligent they are. So why would this exception hold for pigs? Why would you make an exception for pigs? Because they're even smarter than dogs. So why is it wrong to kill a dog even if they're less intelligent than a pig? Right? So this is a very inconsistent view on behalf of the non-vegan. And if intelligence dictates how we should treat somebody in terms of harming them or not, what if there is a mentally disabled person, a human person who's mentally disabled? Would that make it okay to harm mentally disabled people because they're not as smart as we? No, that's ridiculous. Nobody would ever accept that. No rational person would ever accept this. And if you think it's wrong to harm somebody, no matter how intelligent they are, then what's the morally relevant distinction between humans and non-human animals? There are none. That's why we're vegan. Number 11, we're humans. They're not humans. So this is blatant speciesism. I mean, this is akin to racism, right? Oh, you're judging an entire species of animals or beings just because they're a different species, right? You're saying they're lesser than us because they're a different species. We get to kill them and harm them now, all because of some genotypic or, phenotypical, reasons, some genetic reasons. Because that's really what you're saying here. What you're saying in this sentence is that there's a specific general group of genes or phenotypes that grant you the right to harm somebody because they're a different genotype than you or a different phenotype than you, which would render them a different species. I think this is absurd. When you actually lay this argument out, I mean, it seems so intuitively wrong. Because what you're saying is that there's a point in between a human and a non-human that would somehow grant you the right to kill that being. I mean, imagine having a line of human beings and every person behind them gets, slightly different, slightly less human. So imagine this line of humans and their genes are slightly different the further back you go down, and you get to a point where there's a last human, where this one human is the last one who you will save and not put in a gas chamber, but the one right after it, right? The one right after that human, you would designate as non-human. There's the cutoff, and that person, that being, would then be stuffed into a gas chamber under your authority, under your logic, under your stance. That person, that being who looked just like the person before it, but just had a couple genes that were different, rendering them a different species, you would say that that being ought to be put into a gas chamber and farmed and enslaved and killed, all because they're a different species. I think this is utterly absurd. I mean, if you look at these two beings, they're almost identical, yet you, under your logic, under the speciesist logic, you would say that that one non-human being is deserving of the gas chamber. I think that's ridiculous. Number 12. But plants feel pain, though. Plants have no brain, no nervous system, no neurons, not even nociceptors, which are required to feel pain. That's what sends electrical signaling to the brain that tells your brain, hey, that's pain. Plants don't have any of that. How could they possibly experience pain as animals do at all? Now, some will say, well, plants scream or they send signals. And this is, this has been known for centuries. There's nothing new about this knowledge that tells us that there's somehow pain going on there. What they're referring to here are very light, infrequent variation potentials that are exchanged in plants. It is electrical signaling, but this signaling is only linked to osmoregulatory processes, which means water distribution. These signals are being sent throughout the plant to distribute water across the body of the plant. It's not there to feel pain. There's no signaling going to a brain or a neural network or even a neuron. There is none of that. This signaling has no correlation to pain at all. It's correlated to the water management system of a plant. And when it comes to the screams, right? Oh, you cut a plant, you cut grass, it screams. Oh, those screams are not coming from the plant. There's air bubbles. When a drought occurs, when a plant is stressed, it doesn't get enough water, air bubbles can build up in the plant, and sometimes they pop. And these air bubbles that pop send out frequencies that are inaudible to humans. You can't hear them. They're not actually screams from the plant themselves. These are called cavitation events. They're very well known in science. Nothing to do with pain at all. And finally, even if plants did feel pain, even if they felt pain as animals do, as we do, it would still be better to go vegan, because guess what? Vegans kill less plants. Vegans are killing less plants and animals. So even if they felt pain, it would still be better to go vegan. So you're actually arguing, again, for veganism every time you think or say plants feel pain. Number 13, your phone's battery is made from child minors. First of all, this is a blatant fallacy. Oh, because you do one thing bad, therefore everything else you do is bad. That's an argument for futility. It's fallacious. Also, this is a very bold claim you're making, right? You're saying that you know for a fact that child minors were, used in the process of making that lithium. How do you know this? Where's your empirical data for that? You have zero. And we know that companies like Apple, they're actively striving to, wean off of any kind of harmful labor laws in other countries. So there are some companies out there who do not support those things. Remember, veganism doesn't mean that you cause no harm. right? It means that we do as much as practicable. And what this means is it would not be practicable for all of us to get rid of our phones. Phones are required for work, for jobs, for all these things. The amount of utility gained by having a phone is so much greater than any kind of disutility, aka negative effects, are far outweighed by the positive utility that the phone provides us. I can use my phone to, talk to more non-vegans and get them to go vegan. I can do a lot of good with the phone I have. So you're not accounting for that in your calculus. So we'd say that there's a threshold where if there's a microgram of, animal products in my phone, well, I think that that's okay because of the utility that the phone provides me. So that little 1 microgram of animal product, that's going to be okay, right? That's going to be exempted because of how much utility the phone provides us. So remember, veganism doesn't just mean that no harm is ever caused. We know that we're not perfect. We can't be perfect, but we try our best, and that's what it means. Number 14, but you want to cause overpopulation? Where are these animals going to go? 92 billion animals are right now stuffed in cages. Every year, we kill another 90 billion animals to produce all kinds of stuff for us. That is wrong. That is overpopulation. 96% of the mammalian biomass in the entire planet, right? You take all the biomass of all mammals, 96% of it are humans and factory farmed animals. Only 4% are wild mammals, okay? We are overpopulated. Humans are overpopulated in terms of sheer numbers, as well as the factory farmed animals. That's overpopulation. Remember, we don't take these animals from the wild, right? It's not like we have to, for some reason, take these animals from the wild because if they breed, they're going to overpopulate. No, we're the ones causing this overpopulation because of our animal consumption, because we forcibly breed these billions of animals into existence every year, like in factories. That's what we are against. So overpopulation is something that vegans are against. You're arguing again for veganism when you even invoke the word overpopulation. 15. I only hunt and kill 1 animal per year. First of all, no you don't. Okay, you can't sustain on 1 animal per year. You obviously are consuming other products, other animal products. You can't get all the calories and nutrients from 1 animal. Especially, you're also drinking probably milk and probably other kinds of dairy products. You're also eating dairy products, eggs perhaps, all these things you're also consuming, I guarantee you. You're also killing those animals involved in those processes, so don't tell me you're only killing 1 animal. That's nonsense. Secondly, even if you were somehow only killing 1 animal per year, remember, there's a deontological perspective to veganism. It doesn't mean that whoever kills the least amount of animals wins. This isn't a game, right? This isn't like Pac-Man. Anybody who says, I only kill 1 animal is thinking from a purely utilitarian perspective, which most vegans don't necessarily hold to, this, strict utilitarian perspective, that whoever does the least amount of harm wins. That's not going to hold in every case. Although you could argue that 1 vegan, if you take the amount of food they consume per year, there's still way less suffering because of the amount of suffering, the degrees of sentience between bugs and, little animals versus a cow or a deer. There's going to be way more sentience. So you could argue from a utilitarian view strictly that even a vegan, 1 vegan's causing less harm per year. But aside from that, remember, veganism also means that we think animals deserve the right to life. And by hunting an animal, you are directly taking the right from that animal away, their right to life and be free and happy. That's what we're against as vegans. We're against killing animals, taking away their rights. And remember, we don't see crop tests as rights violations because we're not actively taking away their rights. That's just a product of producing crops that we need to survive. So we don't see that as something wrong. Also, you could argue against hunting from a utilitarian view by saying, well, if everybody on the planet were to adopt your style of hunting animals, 1 per year, well, that's 8 billion animals per year again, right? Here we go again, killing 8 billion animals per year. And we know that's not enough to sustain people, right? It's going to be more than that. That's why today, under modern infrastructure, 90 billion animals die because of all the waste we produce as human beings. It is not possible and sustainable to adopt a hunting lifestyle for the entire population. It's just not possible. That's why we have to resort back to veganism, which is going to way reduce the amount of harm in a global way. So in principle, you're still wrong as a hunter, and you're not consistent, whereas vegans are being way more consistent. Number 16, invasive species though. Many times, the reason why invasive species even exist is because of human motives. We are the ones distributing animals around for zoos, for all kinds of things. We are the ones, oftentimes, introducing invasive species to certain environments. It's because of our motives, it's because of our egotistical ways. For example, the Spanish colonizers brought feral pigs to the Americas 500 years ago. Why? Because they wanted to, domesticate them and produce them and eat them. Vegans are against that. We're against introducing certain pigs and animals to certain environments because of our consumption. We're against that. So when somebody says, oh, how about the wild hogs? They're taking away our land. Well, yeah, you're the one who did that, silly. You're the one who caused that in the first place because you wanted to eat your damn meat, right? And we're against that as vegans. So in principle, of course, we're going to be against that. But also, we want to reduce populations in the most non-lethal ways possible. We don't want to just go around and shooting animals like barbarians from helicopters. That's not at all the right way to do it. Right? We want to exhaust all non-lethal ways first. Fencing, contraception. There are now vaccine-based contraceptives that have been working in deer populations better than hunting does, right? Hunting is a band-aid. It is not a long-term solution, okay? So we have to look at the root cause of the problem than just, let's just shoot animals. And because, look, we've been hunting for decades and it's problems still happening. So we want to exhaust all non-lethal ways possible first, and then if for some reason the animals are attacking you or harming you, really harming you, and you have no other option available to you, but you have to, kill them, then that would be your last option, and that'd be okay. There's something in principle that says animals never die, right? We're saying that do your best. Do the best with what you have. But let's stop being barbarians just because we want to. And number 17, it's expensive though. So on average, vegan diets are about 30% cheaper, and there's plenty of studies on this showing that people are saving money by being vegan. Most vegans are not wealthy. In fact, most vegans are within poverty levels. People forget how inexpensive rice and beans are, and these staple foods of vegans, they're very inexpensive, they're very cheap. And now there's a lot of fast food chains that are implementing vegan foods, which are very cheap, affordable options too. So don't tell me that in a food desert or wherever you are, you can't get a vegan meal that's cheap. It's going to be most likely the case that you can. Also, veganism is not a diet. So if for some reason you have to consume animal products because it's the only option available to you and you have no other options, and then okay, you can still be vegan and consume a product that's an animal if you have no other option. If that's your last resort and you're about to starve or you're about to die, and that's perfect. We're not going to say, no, you better starve. Do your best, again. But, again, most likely it's going to be the case that you do have access to cheap, affordable vegan foods. It takes a very simple Google search. You can find all kinds of cheap $5 meals that you can buy at the store, grocery store, or even at fast food chain restaurants. So that's not an excuse either. All in all, hope you guys enjoyed the video. We are vegan because we want to be consistent. We want to be consistent in reviews. And remember, nobody's perfect. There is no moral framework that's perfect out there. But we want to be as consistent as possible and also as good and humane as possible. And that's what veganism means. So enjoy. Have a good day, guys.